Sydney Fizzard for Rebel News here in Calgary, Alberta, bringing you a report from the Alberta Prosperity Project's latest event where they detail everything that would come along with Alberta being its own country in regards to budgetary needs and how much money they plan to actually save Alberta if the independence referendum moves forward with the decision being made to leave Canada's Confederation. Anything from getting rid of the Canada Post to providing our own police department so that we no longer have to contract the RCMP, everything is discussed in the document they provided us today, which you can find on their website. For now, we spoke to Jeffrey Rath, one of the co-founders of the Alberta Prosperity Project, barrister and well-known recently for being a strong voice within the Alberta Prosperity Project, advocating for independence.
Alberta will be left with a fiscal surplus of between $23.6 billion and $45.5 billion a year, after fully paying for all of the things that Ottawa currently pays for in Alberta, including an Alberta military, and tripling the spend on Indigenous people in the province of Alberta.
How do we get from the current situation to what's listed in that document?
Well, we're working forward, obviously. I mean, the next step for us is going to be filing our referendum question tomorrow to be approved by Elections Alberta. And then following that, we'll be collecting the 250,000 signatures that we have pledged to that petition already, to move forward to a referendum on the question of, do you agree that Alberta should become a sovereign country and cease to be a province of Canada? So we're working forward on that. Also, for the interest of your viewers, now that we've released the draft fiscal plan for an independent Alberta to demonstrate to all Albertans how much better off we're going to be economically once Alberta becomes an independent country, within the next 2 weeks, we're going to be issuing a draft interim constitution for an independent Alberta so that Albertans can understand how much more their rights will be protected and respected in an independent Alberta, as opposed to the mess that we've got right now with a Westminster Parliament in Edmonton and a Westminster Parliament in Ottawa that have no respect for us as citizens because they regard us as subjects and that we don't have rights, we have mere privileges that they can override anytime they want. The reality of it is, with the doubling of oil and gas production in Alberta within 3 to 5 years, which we think is achievable in an independent Alberta, free of all of the overregulation and interference with Ottawa in the industry of Alberta, we see that Alberta's GDP could double within 5 years, not 10 years, not 20 years. And again, it is our view as an organization, that's the Alberta Prosperity Project, chaired by Dr. Dennis Modry that's here, and our CEO, Mitch Sylvester, that to not follow the program set out in this document is a complete abdication of responsibility and a complete violation of the fiduciary obligations of our elected leaders in Alberta. Foundationally, the biggest issue is that we're no longer going to be sending $70 billion a year to Ottawa, and that we're going to be retaining, all of that money in Alberta for Albertans on a going forward basis, to revitalize the economy of this province that Ottawa has spent the last 40 years trying to destroy. One of the things that we're looking at are putting in place, talking to the Alberta government about making sure they have in place credit swaps and other credit facilities, that would effectively be a quarter of $1 trillion line of credit for the province of Alberta to help ease through transition. But the simple fact of the matter is, Danielle Smith needs to stop talking about leading and start actually leading. There's no reason that she can't immediately, under Section 9213 of the BNA Act, start collecting all provincial and federal taxes in Alberta and only remit to the federal government, those portions of those of taxes that Albertans think are appropriate.
There's obviously going to be some kind of financial back and forth with the United States in the event of an independence situation. What's going to be their main role?
Well, obviously, as our largest customer of oil and gas and other goods, agricultural products, everything that's produced in Alberta, there are large. We export 75% of our goods south to the United States, not east and west to Canada. So, what we foresee on a going forward basis is a complete free market with the United States, an open Alberta-Montana border, free flow of goods between Canada or between Alberta and the U.S. Basically, ongoing integration of our economies. I think it's really interesting to note that a recent Leger poll showed that 70% of Alberta Conservatives are now in favor of independence. So, it's going to be interesting to see what kind of reception Pierre Poilievre gets at the doors in Battle River Crowfoot. I've challenged him to run on the slogan, no more transfer payments for Quebec and milk cow and micro dairy in every barn. But I don't see that happening anytime soon because Poilievre is a federal stooge just like Jason Kenney is.
Well, and it would certainly be funny if Alberta were to separate after the Conservative leader was elected in an Alberta riding. But that's
I have no doubt that Poilievre is going to get elected. I highly doubt that he's going to get elected with 70% of the vote. The way that the incumbent to that seat, who fell on his sword for Poilievre, did. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Certainly, certainly from my perspective, Poilievre is not is no more Albertan than Mark Carney anymore, and he's certainly, from my perspective, not welcome in this province.
Hi. So on the currency issue, are you open to the idea of Alberta regulated financial institutions having 1% of their assets in, say, something like gold, maybe silver, maybe copper, maybe oil? Because in that case, Mark Carney is talking about spending $150 trillion on the Green Initiative and is a big fan of central bank digital currency. Alberta actually going its own with 1% in gold, for example, would mean that even if he tries to collapse the Canadian dollar and move toward a central bank digital currency, Alberta would be protected. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think anything that we can do to move away from the Mark Carney dollar. I mean, I was talking. We have some amazing volunteers within APP, and a gentleman that came forward last week just retired from the Bank of Canada, and as an economist, and he shocked me. We were having a conversation, and he said, "Yeah," he says, "if everybody's wondering why everything costs twice as much," he said, "it's because Carney advised Trudeau to double the M2 money supply in Canada." So literally in the last 5 years, Trudeau and the federal government have doubled the amount of money in circulation. So anybody understanding basic economics, you double the amount of something, you cut its value in half.
Well, Mark Carney is the type of guy who can look down a camera lens and talk about spending $150 trillion with a T dollars on the green agenda. Now, that is 100 times the size of the Canadian national debt as it stands, 4.5 times the size of the U.S. federal debt. So that is insanity. And that means he wants to use central bank digital currency, which he's a huge fan of, to basically force all of us to comply with that green agenda. I see Alberta doing its own thing as a way to save our dollar, because Carney clearly wants to cause inflation and wants to issue all sorts of bogus debt denominated in U.S. currency to European banks. I mean, Portugal, Italy, Greece, and Spain, just between those countries, have about $6 trillion in debt. If you added France, it would be $8 trillion. The total EU debt is about $20 trillion. Canada doesn't want to take that on in green bonds. That's insanity. Any one of those countries going bankrupt would default Canada, therefore. So I think if Alberta financial institutions, for example, have 1% of their assets in gold, could be silver, could be copper, could be oil, it saves us from central bank digital currency.
Let me know in the comments what you think. How much better is Alberta going to be, economically speaking, if it were its own country, no longer married to the Dominion of Canada? Let me know in the comments. For Rebel News, I'm Sydney Fizzard. DoneGettingScrewed.com is where you have to go if you want to see our latest on the Western independence movement sweeping across the country. And that's at DoneGettingScrewed.com.